Hey, welcome in. Well, it's been a long time since we did a Victor Davis Hanson article. And I'm not sure quite why I haven't gotten around to it, but hey, we're back. And as I always intro these videos, I like doing these ones about Victor Davis Hanson's articles because, yeah, he's actually on TV quite a bit doing interviews, but they're short. You know, they're still governed by the rule of concision on cable news. You know, on Fox News, for example. So it's really worthwhile taking a longer look at his articles and getting a little bit more meat on the bone. Although I have my own kind of rule of concision as well, so I will try to keep it from going on way too long. But anyway, let's get into it. And this article is about a week old, and it's on foxnews.com. Seattle's CHOP and the radical left. Here's how cultural revolutions die, or not. And it starts, unlike coups or political revolutions, cultural revolutions don't just change governments or leaders. Instead, they try to redefine entire societies. Their leaders call them holistic and systematic. And that's the kind of language that is being used now. I mean, so they claim that what they're fighting is systemic racism, for instance. And how do you get rid of that? Well, you have to take down the system. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, I think that the whole the whole racism thing is kind of a Trojan horse for Marxism, it appears to me. And really the end game here is just to replace the system that we all enjoy now with a socialist hellhole. But anyway, let's continue. Cultural revolutionaries attack the very reference of our daily lives. The Jacobins' so-called reign of terror during the French Revolution slaughtered Christian clergy and renamed months and created a new supreme being, reason. So an attack to replace religion with something else. And this is kind of interesting, so let's just take a quick look at this. The cult of the supreme being was a form of deism established in France by Robespierre during the French Revolution. It was intended to become the state religion of the new French Republic and a replacement for Roman Catholicism and its rival, the cult of reason. And that actually replaced the cult of reason, which was France's first established state-sponsored atheistic religion intended as a replacement for Catholicism during the French Revolution. In 1794, it was officially replaced by the rival cult of the supreme being, which was promoted by Robespierre. And both cults were officially banned in 1802 by Napoleon. So you can see, the attempt to kind of strike at the foundations of their civilization. And you might say, hey, reason, that sounds good, right? I mean, I'm all for reason. But yeah, it's kind of like, leftists claiming to be the party of science, and to prove it, they can show you 4,000 different genders. And that, mathematics is colonialism, right? So there's a lot of redefining words going on these days, as we all know. Racism itself has been completely redefined into something so nebulous and invisible that it just permeates everywhere, even though you can't really see it. Anyway, let's continue. Mao cracked down on supposed Western decadence, like the wearing of eyeglasses, and made peasants forge pot iron and intellectuals wear dunce caps. And here we have just a quick picture of a guy wearing a dunce cap. He's got his crimes written on his dunce cap. And here you can see the people around him very happy with his suffering. Hey, if you could subscribe, like, and share, that really helps me out. Thanks a lot. And let's continue, though. The current Black Lives Matter revolution has canceled certain movies, television shows, and cartoons, toppled statues, tried to create new autonomous urban zones, obviously CHOP being one of those, and renamed streets and plazas. Some fanatics shave their heads. Others have shamed authorities into washing the feet of their fellow revolutionaries, which is just so pathetic. That doesn't really sound like equality to me. Some fanatics have shaved their heads. I saw this one story, which I just found was really gross. Woke white liberals get yelled at by Black Lives Matter for being too woke and engaging in self-flagellation. Let's take a quick peek. Jeez, is that real? Or is that like makeup?
Down, sister. Don't do that. Why are you here? You added attitude. You a negative addition to this shit. Take it away.
I mean, look at that. Is that makeup? That must be makeup. That can't be real. I mean, if you're looking for, religious parallels with this whole weird leftist movement, well, here's one. I feel like that has to be makeup, like really well done, like movie makeup or something. If it's real, I mean, it's horrible. I mean, these are people that are mentally unwell. Anyway, let's continue. But inevitably, cultural revolutions die out when they turn cannibalistic. Once the Red Guard started killing party hacks too close to Mao, it began to wane. But you know what? The Chinese Communist Party is still there. And they're still in total control, even if they've kind of turned it into economically kind of a hybrid of communism and capitalism. They're still there. And just ask, the million Uyghur Muslims in that country that are in concentration camps how they feel about it. Anyway, it goes on, if toppling Confederate statues is required, what then about Nancy Pelosi's own mayor father, who once, as Baltimore's mayor, dedicated honorific statues to Confederate generals? What about that? And let's just back that up. Pelosi calls, and this is from the Washington Examiner, Pelosi calls for removal of Confederate statues while silent on her father dedicating one as mayor. Well, isn't that strange? Isn't that strange? I thought she was a true believer. Didn't she get down on her knees in atonement? I thought she was fully on board with everything. Let's see, what did she say? Quote, the halls of Congress are at the very heart of our democracy. Pelosi sent a letter to a congressional panel. Quote, the statues in the Capitol should embody our highest ideals as Americans, expressing who we are and who we aspire to be as a nation. Monuments to men who advocated cruelty and barbarism to achieve such a plainly racist end are a grotesque affront to these ideals. Their statues pay homage to hate, not heritage. They must be removed. Well, it sounds like she's fully on board, but hold on a second. Some media outlets, including Breitbart News, are reporting that Pelosi has remained silent on her own father's decision to dedicate a Confederate statue during his time as mayor of Baltimore. Well, maybe by this time she's condemned her father too. I mean, right now, the sins of the father, that's all the rage, isn't it? You don't have to do anything bad yourself. You could just be related to somebody. And look at that soccer player whose wife wrote something and he got canned off the team. And, the left has completely embraced like collective guilt and, white privilege, the original sin of white privilege and all of this. I feel like it must be a pretty confusing game to play if you're trying to be a leader, trying to be in the Democratic Party or, say, the Liberal Party or NDP in Canada or Labour Party in the UK. It must be a pretty confusing game to play. And let's see, he talks about like progressive institutions now. Stanford and Yale, coveted brand names of the progressive professional classes, are named after what protesters now deem racists. It is easier to target Fort Bragg, the iconic military base named after a Confederate general, racist and military mediocrity, than to see one's MBA or PhD lose its Yale luster, or to confess that a liberal presidential icon perpetuated racism. But as the ideological fervor, as confused and nebulous as it is, gains further steam, that Yale and all the institutions, Yale will be targeted. They'll all be targeted. The idea is to tear everything down. And he says, once a cultural revolution gets going, there can be no contextualization of the past, no allowance for human frailty, no consideration of weighing evil versus good. Eventually, the architects of global upheavals always make two miscalculations. One, they presume that destroying things will never apply to themselves, given their loud virtue signaling. Two, if they are fingered by the mob, they assume they can somehow use their clout and influence to win exemption. So, rules for thee, but not for me. Anyway, it goes on. In other words, once cultural revolutions turn anarchic and eat their own, they lose support. When quiet sympathizers conclude that they too may be targeted, to survive, they turn on their former icons. And this does happen. You just want to make sure it doesn't happen after they've already established authoritarian control over everybody. Because once that's happened, there's nothing really you can do anyway. The Soviet Union lasted a long time. But anyway, we'll continue. We are seeing that now. Liberal sympathetic bystanders are wondering whether downtown arson and looting will go private and reach their suburban homes. Do they really want their marquee universities or the Washington or Jefferson monuments defaced or renamed? What happens when calling 911 gets a constant busy signal? And that's happening. That's happening. And again, this article is about a week old now, but I just saw a story about a woman who was in her car, got surrounded. She was in her car with her child, by the way, got surrounded by lunatics, called 911, and they're like, hey, you got to call City Hall and tell them about it, because they've been told, the police have been told, don't do anything. I can't help but think that's not going to go well for the cause. Anyway, let's keep going. When a liberal mayor or black police chief or progressive governor or white leftist who diverges from the party line is targeted by the mob, then who really is safe? And you know what? I do have a little something on that issue. Wisconsin state senator attacked by protesters as demonstrations in Madison turn violent. From the Washington Post. The Washington Post. Amid heated demonstrations that left 2 statues destroyed and windows smashed in Madison, Wisconsin, a Democratic state senator was reportedly attacked by protesters near the state capitol. Funny how it's when it happens to a Democratic state senator, it's reportedly attacked. Well, as we'll see, he was definitely attacked. Now, let's see. This state senator, Tim Carpenter, had been heading to the state capitol to work late Tuesday when he stopped to snap a photo of the protesters. Whoa. That's provocation right there. You're not supposed to take pictures. That's anti-revolutionary. And he said, quote, I don't know what happened. All I did was stop and take a picture, and the next thing I'm getting 5-6 punches kicked in the head, said Carpenter, 60. Well, didn't he know that they're against systematic racism, and he's part of the system, so you know what he is. They just don't care that you're a Democrat. You may as well be Mussolini. I mean, it doesn't make any difference to them. Let's see. He may have a concussion and a fractured nose, in addition to a bruised eye and sore ribs and back. Well, that will happen when you get attacked by a mob. He's lucky he got away with that little. And what was his diagnosis of the situation? Quote, this has got to stop before someone gets killed, he wrote. Quote, sad thing, I'm on their side for peaceful demonstrations. I'm a gay progressive Dem, a senator who served 36 years in the legislature. They don't care. System has to come down. I mean, they're tearing down statues of like abolitionists. They want to tear down statues of like Abraham Lincoln, for God's sakes. Maybe, just maybe it's about more than what you're being told by Don Lemon or Chris Cuomo. Anyway, let's continue. What deflated the Me Too movement was the high toll that the accusations took among the Hollywood and cultural elite. That's right, they didn't like it when it came for them. Suddenly, progressive celebrities began demanding evidence and insisting on presumed innocence when their careers were destroyed. And let's not forget the difference in treatment between Joe Biden and Kavanaugh when there were certain claims made against them. Anyway, let's continue. What burns out these cultural upheavals is that today's revolutionary can be denounced as tomorrow's sellout. No leader wants to share Robespierre's rendezvous with his own guillotine. And yeah, Robespierre loved the guillotine. He loved the guillotine so much, in fact, that the people around him went, we think he loves it a little bit too much, and maybe it's safer if we just kind of send him to the guillotine. And that's what happened. Victor Davis Hanson says, there is one caveat. Sometimes cultural revolutions don't die out if they are hijacked by a thug or killer. And here, reading this, I have to not say a couple of names here because YouTube. And if you're watching this on, one of the alt tech platforms or something, which I really encourage you to go to, BitChute or Minds, my apologies. The bad person from Germany movement was an irrelevant, nihilist mob of crazies until Badman from Germany turned it into his personal genocidal cult. A murderous Stalin resuscitated the absurdities of Lenin's failing Bolshevism. The present madness will wane like a virus as it eats its own and terrifies its sympathizers that they may be next. Unless, of course, a would-be Napoleon uses a, quote, whiff of grape shot and turns the mob into his personal cult. The armed rapper Raz Simone, who some say lords over the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone in downtown Seattle, so far has neither the diabolic talent nor the resources to spread his anarchy. And yeah, this article, again, is about a week old. But this is proved correct. Dissident generals may be misguided, but they remain patriots. So far, we have seen no Napoleon emerge to claim that he is the only man who can lead today's urban revolutionaries to victory. Now, I will just add here that there is something different today. Mass media, the internet, social media, that is a new tool or weapon that exists now by which you can virtually destroy somebody. There's people out there who are very excited to find out what Halloween costume you wore 20 years ago. And if you wore the wrong one, you're very likely to be fired from your job, have your, economic prospects destroyed. And nobody cares whether or not who you are. Nobody cares about the content of your character or who you were then and who you are now. There's this new weapon in the arsenal, which is unpredictable. And it's yet to be seen where this new thing is going to take us ultimately. Whether humans will be able to transcend this to find some sort of accommodation with each other, even if they disagree or not. I guess we'll have to find out. Hopefully the good ideas will win in the end. And anyway, we're right at the end now, so Victor ends us off with a final thought. Cultural revolutions not only eventually die without cruel dictators, but they can spawn dramatic pushbacks. Ronald Reagan was the answer to the radical 60s. Revolutionaries are now sowing the wind, but they have little idea of the reactive whirlwind they may soon reap. And, I think there is very little danger of Germany 1933 happening in the United States or Canada or UK or anywhere like that. But, the pushback, if it's and there will be some pushback, but if it's effective, leftists will be fine. They'll be free to still stir up, still teach in universities and work for CNN or MSNBC or the New York Times. The only thing that can change that is if people just stop paying attention to them, stop giving them money, essentially. But, it'll still be liberal democracies, essentially. If the left wins and takes over and the Cultural Revolution succeeds and what really is behind it all is an economic revolution, a Marxist revolution, well, then there's not really, that's a long road back from that. That's a long road back because they've already told us what they want to do. They want to destroy anybody who dissents, including their own. But anyway, I thought that was another great article from Victor Davis Hanson. I hope you enjoyed it. If you are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe because they can and do hide this kind of content from you. If you've just stumbled onto it, if you're not subscribed already, it's kind of a miracle because they hide this stuff pretty good. So please subscribe if you want to see more, and then periodically check to make sure you haven't been unsubscribed because that happens. For some reason that happens with this kind of content. Liking and sharing also really helps to kind of get around the algorithm as well, so that is very helpful, and I thank you very much if you do that. If you just want to listen, Radio Baloney, the podcast, that is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and Spotify and iTunes and Spreaker and CastBox and a million more. Radio Baloney, if you look for it, you will find it. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you next time.